All right. I think this is working. It's working. Okay. All right. So welcome to the first virtual porch visit of the Farmhouse Gathering Group. We're going to talk today about different types of gardening, creative gardening. I should have had an email out to everybody telling them Zoom has had some security issues and we didn't want people to sign in and get involved in all the hacking and the problems. So we just decided that we would go ahead and do this, try to answer any questions we got. We'll talk about what we got to talk about. And at the end, I'll have links in the description box for the video so that you can go to everybody's sites. We'll try to answer everybody's questions and then we'll go from there. Sound good? All right, so first we're going to talk about the idea of gardening. And I think that everybody has this misconstrued idea that to have a garden, you have to have a plot of land and you have to plant certain vegetables at a certain time of year only, and then you harvest them and then you're done. And that's not anything like what gardening is about anymore. It wasn't that way before, and it certainly isn't that way now. My topic for today is on a food forest, which means you can take any area of land, any spot of land, and you can plant basically anything that grows in your climate, your soil, and in your gardening zone. A food forest is basically walking out of your door and having everything at your fingertips that's edible. You can grow everything from bushes to vines to flowers to herbs to traditional vegetables. How you do it or where you do it in your yard, it doesn't matter. A lot of places have zoning that you can't plant certain vegetables in your front yard. Some places do not. However, everybody has a spot, whether it be a 20-foot area, whether it be 3 acres of land, there's plenty of room for you to plant. Basically, a food forest is 7 layers, starting with a canopy layer all the way down to root vegetables, and it's everything in between, and it all works together. It is not meant for something that you keep digging up and redoing each year or each month or each season. Some of the things are perennial, so they come back on their own, like trees, fruit trees, things like that. But they're different for everybody. Every climate has something different. What I'd grow in Florida is not what somebody would grow in Oklahoma or Nebraska. Basically, the idea behind it is to grow everything that you can grow that grows in your zone so that you can harvest it and not have to go to the grocery store to buy it. But within that edible food forest, there's tons of ways that you can grow food, whether it be in containers and raised beds, in the ground, vines that grow on trees. The possibilities are endless. So with that said, I'll have links in the description, like I said, for YouTube. You can go to my website. I have 2 really good posts on food forests. There's a book there. There's all kinds of information to get you started, and you can always ask me questions on my contact page. So today we're going to talk about 3 different types of gardenings that you can do that can be combined with a food forest or just done on their own. And we're going to start off with Kathy, and we'll go from there. Go ahead, Kath.
Hey, everybody.
Hi,
A lot of people, when they decide to have a garden, they go out and look in their backyard and they think, this is too tiny, it's too shady. I just can't plant out here, or my husband won't let me dig up the grass. But you don't have to plant in the ground. You can plant in containers. And you can grow lettuce and carrots and all sorts of vegetables in containers instead of in the ground. And that way you can move them around. If where you put it in the first place isn't sunny enough, you can just pick up and move the container someplace else where it gets better sun. Or you can line them up against the fence, or however you want to do it. Containers are portable, and you can change your mind at any time, which is really nice when you're first starting out and you discover that maybe that didn't work quite that well. It's easy to find containers. You don't have to go and buy, spend a fortune on all the containers that you need. They don't have to be really pots. You can use 5-gallon buckets. You can use smaller buckets. I have for smaller plants. I have feed troughs for my animals that sometimes get chewed up a little bit by the dogs and have holes in them, but that makes them perfect for containers because they already have drainage holes in there and I didn't have to do anything. Kitty litter buckets. We have indoor cats, which means we have a lot of kitty litter buckets. My husband drilled holes in the bottom of those and I planted potatoes in them one year. That worked really well. Just look around, see what you've got. get buckets from restaurants or bakeries or whatever if they're willing to sell them or part with them. And you can even actually use feed sacks. And if you don't have livestock, but you have dogs, you can use dog food bags. Kind of plastic feeling ones, not paper ones, but the ones that kind of have a plastic feel to them. You just roll those down a little bit, poke some holes in the bottom, and fill them up with soil and plant in them. Those work really well. And they're cheap, they're free. If you have a dog, you've already got the bags. Carrots you can grow in, I would use like deep pots for carrots, although you can grow little carrots too. Either you can pick them quickly, sooner than normal so that they're short, or you can buy the smaller varieties. If you look at the seed packets and it says dwarf, that's a good sign that it's a little plant. You can plant a salad garden in a big tub with your lettuce and everything, and that doesn't have to be deep because lettuce's roots are not real long. But having a big wide container means you can get more into it. Children's wading pools will be on sale pretty soon. You could poke holes in the bottom of those and use those to grow even tomato plants, anything. So just remember that, look around you, see what kind of containers you might have around, kind of fit it to the plant so that if it's a root vegetable, it's a deeper pot for the plants. If it's a plant that grows taller, you can have a narrower type of pot. Big plants like tomato plants, you probably would need to have some sort of trellis for it to grow up, and vines like beans and peas and so on. But you can rig something up for that. That's easy to do. I'm really good at innovating things and inventing things and just using what I've got and making it work. So that's pretty much what I have to say about containers. And if you have any thoughts or any questions or anything, just let me know and we'll try to answer those for you.
Shauna?
Hi guys. So last year I prepped a Hugelkultur garden bed. It was just a 4 foot by 4 foot wooden box basically that somebody had done for a raised bed, and they decided they didn't want it anymore, so I took it off their hands. We piled up some rotted wood in the bottom, leaves, manure, compost, and some soil. It just kind of sat dormant last year. Didn't get around to planting it, but this year I have started radishes, lettuce, spinach, and onions in my bed. These are really good because they're cool season crops, and we're still getting a little bit of frost at night, so these ones are they're still a little bit tolerant of a little bit of frost. So definitely can't put a lot of my crops out there, but the cool season crops are going to do pretty well right now. And Hugelkultur, if you're not familiar with it, it's a German or East European gardening style, and it's great. The rotting wood in the bottom acts like a sponge, so it releases moisture into the bed year-round, basically. Once you get a really well-established bed, sometimes you don't even have to water it at all through the whole season. So pretty soon I'm going to do a traditional Hugelkultur mound, time willing. And that is usually a 3 foot wide, about 6 or 8 foot long, and about 3 foot tall mound. And you just pile up the wood, leaves. You're basically composting in place. So you just put all of your compostable materials in there, put some soil on top, plant right into it. It works like a raised bed. It stays about 3 foot tall, so it's a little easier to harvest and weed and that sort of thing. Then just top it off with mulch, weed it when you need to, water it if you need to, and that gets you some pretty good soil to grow in. It's a wonderful growing medium. Um, I guess that's probably about all I have for right now.
All right, Julie.
I'm Julie, and I really enjoy doing theme gardens. Basically, if you have a food, a craft, you can grow a theme garden. Your theme gardens are based on three different things: culinary, crafting, and medicinal. You can take Kathy's idea of container gardening and do theme gardens. You can do a Hugelkultur like Shauna, or you can incorporate it into Annie's food forest. Basically, what you do is you think of what you want. If you're a food enthusiast and you'd like to do something like a spaghetti garden, a pizza garden, you would do things like the paste type tomatoes, Amish paste, Roma. You would add some garlic. You would add basil. You would pretty much plant anything that would fit within that category. With spaghetti, you would do your garlic, your onions, your basil, your oregano, and your tomatoes. But if you want to do a salsa garden, you do your tomatoes, your onions, your garlic, and cilantro. The beauty about a theme garden is you can take your Italian garden and blend it with your salsa garden. The only difference is you would plant basil, oregano, and cilantro, and then you can produce way more. You can take Kathy's idea of a salad garden. You can plant lettuce and radish, and personally, I like cucumbers and squash in my salads fresh. You can do a pickle garden. Find a food that you like and determine what plants you need for it and start planting. For crafting, it might take a little bit more. I am a weaver, and my goal is to be a spinner. And if I ever do learn to spin yarn, I want to learn how to dye my own yarns. In that case, I would grow plants that are dedicated to dyeing fiber. Annie in her food forest would have walnuts. Walnuts make an excellent brown dye. Kathy has talked about growing carrots. The carrot root makes orange. Like Shauna's onions, her onion skins will make orange. You can also do things like grapevines, wisteria vines, cattails. If you have a pond, you can grow cattails. Cattails are excellent for rush weaving. For the bottom of your chairs, instead of doing caning, you can do rush weaving. Another garden you can do for a theme is a medicinal garden. You can grow all kinds of great herbs. You can also combine the herbs with culinary and crafting and medicinal as well. But if you do try to do medicinal, I do ask that you talk to somebody who knows what they're doing and know your plants, because some medicinal plants can also be harmful as well as helpful. We all like to refer to Heidi over at Healing Harvest Homestead. She is very knowledgeable on that, and I know she will answer any questions that you have. But basically, you can do it in any size. Take Kathy's container garden, Shauna's Hugelkultur, Annie's food forest. Find out what you like, and there's your theme garden. If you have any questions on it, just ask me, and I'll be glad to give you some ideas on plants that you can use as well. Annie, back to you.
Well, thanks. Well, that kind of concludes us in our creative gardening ideas. I know there's 100 million ways of gardening. We just wanted to talk on a couple of them right here. One of the things that we did have a question that was asked in the group from Melissa from Frost Hill Farms. And she had asked, she said she knows how to plant vegetables and she knows how to plant a garden, but she doesn't really understand the whole concept of what to plant when. And I think that I'm understanding it as she's not sure of maybe the seasonal planting or the timing of it. You might want to check, and of course everybody can use this. Almost every town, I think, has a cooperative extension office. I know like in Florida, it's called the Jacksonville Agricultural Office. It may be under a different name, but you can actually call them or write them, of course, when they're open again. And you can ask them for not only what grows in your area and what grows well, but they'll also tell you like what plants are native or what species of plants grow better. So in other words, maybe blueberries that I can grow in Florida, Julie may be able to grow them in Louisiana, but there are different types of them. So that's questions that your agricultural center would be able to answer for you. However, Shauna, I'm going to let Shauna try to answer this just a little bit better because her way of gardening right now is basically based on spring planting. Just keep in mind that what works for me does not work for Shauna, which does not work for Kathy because we're in different areas. So it all depends on what zone you're in, what your weather is like, what kind of soil you have. I live in Florida. I have sand. Across the street from me used to be cows, so they have manure dirt. They can grow things so much easier than I can. So we can't really give you a specific, but we can give you close and an idea of how to go about it. So Shauna, can you kind of touch on the spring gardening thing a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in Southwest Idaho, so it's growing zone 7B. I believe Frost Hill Farms is in Maine, so might be a little more north than me. Not totally sure though, but might want to check on online, find out your growing zone and your last frost state and that sort of thing. That being said, there's a bunch of cool weather crops that can withstand some frost. That would be most of the cole crops. So lettuce, spinach, cabbage, those sort of things grow really well when it's cooler out. When it gets too hot, they just end up bolting and going to seed, and they're very bitter too, if you can even get them to grow when it's too hot. So other options for some cool weather crops are radishes. Carrots go pretty good in the spring. Broccoli's pretty good. Yeah. Yep, broccoli, cauliflower, all those. Definitely don't want to put like tomatoes and that sort of thing out before your first or your last frost. Got that backwards. So, because those are heat-loving vegetables. Peppers also shouldn't go in the ground until after your last frost. But peas are good too. I love growing peas early in the spring because if I try it even in May, they won't grow at all. So basically you want to start with the cool season crops right now. Yeah, I'm sure we all have a little bit of information on cool season crops.
Well, I'll add this. And I've said this many times, but everybody buys vegetable packets and some of us buy like heritage or heirloom seeds and they come with specific directions for the town that you live or the state that you live in. However, when you buy commercial seeds from a place like Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, things like that, on the back always has this directions according to your zone. But what you need to keep in mind is where you're buying your seeds from. If I live in Florida, so when I buy seeds that are packaged and grown and taken care of in Missouri, they may not go so good for me because my climate is way, way hotter and way, way longer of a hot time. Celery, for example, in 7 years, I have never been able to grow celery in Florida because we just don't get enough cold for it to grow. And a lot of seed packets will say that I can grow it from October to February. But if October is still 70 and 80 degrees or February, we're already in the 80s, that celery isn't going to grow. So you really need to try when you buy your seeds to buy them either locally, as local as you can, or make sure that they're made for your climate. I order a lot of seeds from Baker's Creek, and Baker's Creek is really good about saying, these are great for hot weather climates or longer season of heat, that type of thing. So you want to keep that in mind too, because broccoli that I would grow in Florida is not the same broccoli that you would grow in Maine, for example. So anyway, I hope that answers your question. feel free to ask any one of us if you have any more on that. But it's a real hit or miss answer with what to plant when. You know, it really is going to go by your climate. So you're really going to have to learn that first. So anyway, so that should wrap it up. I will put in the description a link to, and I believe you're in Maine from Frost Hill Farm. So I'm going to go ahead and find the link for you for a local agricultural center for you, if that helps, and see if I can find some gardening resources up there. But I'll share our links to each of our websites. I'll share some links to each posts for each one of us on the things that we talked about. But I think basically what we want you to get out of this is that you have a yard, use it. You don't have to buy everything at the grocery store. You can grow so much more food than you know. My son-in-law is going to do hydroponics on old maid steps in his house with a grow light. I mean, you can do anything. You can grow in a basement, a greenhouse, on a windowsill, in the house, outside. Just grow your own. Don't use the grocery stores when you're capable of doing it yourself. And then, you know, learn how to preserve it so it lasts even longer. But like I said, just get a garden going. I don't care what kind it is, but just start one. If you have any comments, you have any suggestions or questions, make sure you put them in the group so we can answer your questions. We'll check back in by Friday and try to do a group post to see if we can help. So anything else you ladies want to add?
Yes, I do.
No.
If you don't know your growing season, you can go to davesgarden.com and put in your zip code. There's a page that just asks for your zip code. It will tell you your garden zone, and it will give you your average first and last frost date. Now, of course, it says, you know, if your last frost date is April 1st, it's not always April 1st, but that's the average. It might be a little bit later, it might be a little earlier, but it's close. It gives you an idea how to plant.
I'll add a link to that in there. That Dave's
Okay.
Garden also, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure you know, Kathy, but that website, you can also go in and put in a picture or a plant or a name of a plant. And there's millions of people that have contributed to this site that will show like their version of the plant, and you can get all kinds of information on it. That site's fantastic. I'll make sure I put a link to that in the description.
Definitely.
Anything else, ladies?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, so
Yeah,
that's
I'm glad everybody joined us, and we're waiting for any questions that they might have.
all right. So we'll see everybody next week on Tuesday.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.